Morning, everybody. I'm Brian Forget, and today we're going to configure some VLANs. Every switch OS has their own way of configuring VLANs, but the beauty of Ethernet is that as long as you match your tagged and ideally untagged VLANs on whatever link you've set up, you're going to be okay. So let's get into it. Aha, Tiny Brian. And here's where we left off last time. Don't worry, don't have to go back and see everything. But just to call out, right? The idea is you might be configuring some switch where some ports are going down to your hosts, and these might not have any, or pardon me, the hosts might not have any idea that they're connected to any VLANs. Other ports might be connecting up different switches or switch to routers, and likely these ports would have multiple VLANs on them, and that VLAN tagging is going to get involved on those ports. As an aside, if one of these computers was a server with a bunch of virtual machines on it, very likely you could think of it like it's another switch. Yeah, basically, very likely if you've got some server but like ESXi or Linux or Windows server, whatever, that's acting as a hypervisor, you could have basically different V switches on there, each associated with their own VLAN, and effectively a trunk going from our switch over to that server. Okay, let's come back around though, and I'm just going to minimize all this. Don't need it. Ooh. Little look ahead. We're going to come back to that real soon. Just want to nail down some generalities that'll get you real far. So, very generally speaking, for many operating systems, different switches and switches anyway, there are access mode and trunk mode. And very generally speaking, if you put some port into access mode, very generally speaking, that lets you set a single untagged VLAN of whichever VLAN you want. And a trunk port, or a switch port set in trunk mode, very generally speaking, is going to allow multiple tagged VLANs, whichever you want, and a single untagged VLAN. Steal that, paste, whichever you want. Okay, this will get you pretty far. And on many operating systems, what you would do is you would log into the switch, you would go into config mode. That's generally speaking where you can change the configuration of the switch. Different operating systems do it differently, but many of them handle this way, config mode. And then you would go to whatever port you're trying to configure or interface you're trying to configure. And then in many operating systems, you would put it in one of these two modes, either access mode or trunk mode. Well, let's go look at that. Here, this is not a switch virtualization setup that I've showed you how to do yet. This is Cisco Modeling Labs, or CML. There's a paid and free versions of it. And for the moment, the short version is I've got this set up with, with two virtual layer 2 switches here. And I've got a cable between them. And then each of those virtual switches run on my computer here is hooked up to a little desktop Linux system. We can see down at the bottom the command line for those. Right now I'm on this, oh, that's funny, IOL. But yeah, this iOS 1 is this switch over here on the left. I go to this other tab here. This should be iOS 2. Come on, friend. There we go, iOS 2. I've already changed the host name. That's this switch over here on the right. And then I've got desktop 0, computer at the bottom left, and desktop 1, computer at the bottom right. I've also gone ahead and set up IP addresses on these desktop 0 and 1. Desktop 0, or pardon me, desktop 1. No, I'm so sorry. I clicked on it. There we go. 10.00.20 over here. There we go. And desktop 0's got 10.00.10. And what we're going to do is we are going to configure a port on the switch over here on the left, iOS-1, I've named it. We're going to configure its Ethernet 0 to be an access port for VLAN 2. And then we're going to configure this link here, this Ethernet 0/1 is the name of that interface, that port. We're going to configure that as a trunk port with 2 is tagged, 1 is untagged. We're going to do the same thing at the other end of that cable over there, the other end of that pretend switch. We're going to configure it the same way, 2 tagged, 1 untagged, trunk mode, and then another access port down here on VLAN 2. Now, why do I have an untagged VLAN 1 between the two of these? Technically, I don't need it, but for a handful of reasons we'll get into later when we get into spanning tree, especially per VLAN spanning tree, it can definitely be to your advantage to have an untagged VLAN, and the default one is 1, so we'll just leave it that way. If you have a strong opinion about not using VLAN 1 as untagged, no, that's fine. I just set it to be the same VLAN at both ends of the cable. Should be good. Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing. Access port on both of these switches going down to our desktop, trunk port between them. Now, we are going to have to, for Cisco reasons, add in a couple other things along the way. We are going to be disabling VTP, the virtual trunking protocol, or VTP, and we're also going to be disabling DTP, the dynamic trunking protocol. We'll do this along the way. This is a strong opinion of mine. Don't use these. If you're already using these, it's fine. Right? Just be aware. But strong personal opinion here, don't use these. Manually configure your VLANs. You're going to have a better time almost always. We'll come back to it. Okay, but yeah, these are going to be disabled. Oh, come on, ooch out the way. Okay, so here we are. I am logged into the command line of this iOS switch on the top left. Press enter a few times from this pretend serial connection. And my prompt is there with the host name of the switch and a greater than symbol. I cannot do almost anything on the switch right now. To be able to do almost anything on the switch, I need to type in enable and press enter. Ooh, super secret. A little bit, but mostly it's that one could have an enable password where I would then be prompted to know the password before I could configure anything. So even if I'm standing at the thing with a serial cable, I got to know the password before I can change stuff. That's the point of it. But enable or EN is all you really need. Because in networking, one of the things you'll find along the way is, and I highly recommend it, figure out how little you can type. Yeah. Play with that when you can. All right, but now check it out. My prompt has changed. iOS-1 pound. I'm now in executive privilege mode or enabled mode. I said I need earlier that I would need to get to config mode to be able to change pretty much anything on here. So I type in conf. Oops. But if I just press enter on this conf, it'll yell at me and say, "What kind of config mode do you want?" What you need to type out is configure terminal if you like typing. Or conf space T is all you need. Okay, now we are in configuration mode. Configure terminal is what Cisco likes here. This is now basically the part of the configuration, the prompt that we go to be able to change anything. We said that we want to go change these 2 ports, and hey, I'm going to start with my 00 here. So I need to get to that port, see what's or for me, I need to be able to go get to its interface to configure it. So it's literally interface that I would need to type in. And then the name of the port. Now I'm going to hit question mark. Question mark is your best friend in networking. That's going to show you all the possible things that you could type next. Interface space question mark, lots of things. And you got more here. If you're coming from Linux, it's going to look familiar. It's almost like you type pipe more. It's just the default of most switches. When you look through all that list and you want to see more, just hit the space bar. Got about another 20 lines. Space bar, space bar. Now you get to the end. Okay, what we were looking for in that big mess was show interface Ethernet. I swear it's in there. You've already spotted it, and I haven't. There it is, Ethernet. And then the port, in this case, 0/0. So interface, ETH, 0/0. All right, cool. Now I'm at this config IF, or the interface configuration. Some switch operating systems, or many switch operating systems, behave almost exactly like this. Some will, at the prompt here, show you the name of the port you're at. Not here. It's fine. Okay, and now we want to configure it for a single untagged VLAN. We're going to put it in access mode. And I'm going to write it big in here first. What we should be doing is, heck, I'll put the whole thing in here. It was enable, and then conf t, and then interface eth 0. I'm typing it up and I just remembered something. Yes, I do want to go to that port, and I do want to put it in access mode, and I do want to assign it to a VLAN, but I want to assign it to a VLAN that doesn't exist yet. We got to go make it first. So I tell you what, before we go to this port, back at config t, what we're going to do is, I'm going to mute that other computer I got here. There we go. What we're going to do here is, back at config t, we are going to make a VLAN. Yep. Through the cunning use of typing, literally VLAN space 2, we'll have made a VLAN 2. All right, let's do it. So I'm just going to get back out of this interface Ethernet 0/0. Ooh, and to do that, you type in exit. Exit takes you up a level. Now I'm no longer at that interface. I'm at config mode again. And I want to make a VLAN 2. VLAN space 2. Press enter. Now it exists. My prompt change now is config-VLAN, but by typing in VLAN space 2 from config mode, I've created that VLAN. And if I'm going to get back out of here, I can type exit. Yeah, if I want to get the whole way out of config mode, exit again. And in fact, maybe I want to type a show command. Classically, you need to be out of config mode to do show commands. Show VLAN. Show commands are basically saying, hey, switch, tell me something. Tell me something you know. In this case, show VLAN is, hey, switch, show me your VLANs. Cisco, generally speaking, you're going to have VLAN 1 by default. Most every switch, you're going to have a VLAN 1 by default. And now there's a VLAN 2 as well. Yeah. Now, I'm going to switch to my other one here real quick. iOS 2, enable, show VLAN. I have not made a VLAN. I have. My bad, y'all. So that's embarrassing. Past me already had this set up. Hang on. Conf T. I'm going to get rid of it. No VLAN 2. Show VLAN. Sweet. No VLAN 2. Yeah. Doesn't exist by default. If you do want to delete one, config mode, no VLAN, whatever number deletes it. All right. So hey, we're back over here on switch 1. And we got a VLAN 1 and 2. And I'm going to go back to config mode and interface eth 0/0. Notice I didn't type very much. int space e space 0/0. Interface Ethernet 0/0. You just don't have to put the whole thing in. And now we said we wanted a single untagged VLAN 2 coming down to here, and very recently past us pointed out that that was going to be access mode. So yeah, in here we are going to say switch port, mode access, and then we're going to type in switch port access VLAN 2. What's up with these? Well, first, it's declaring which mode. Is it trunk port or is it an access port? And this switch port command is literally saying, hey, I'm configuring a switch port, a port that's going to be doing Ethernet stuff like VLANs. Yep, so your switch port commands, generally speaking, are your Ethernet-y VLAN configuration stuff. In this case, switch port mode access is declaring single untagged VLAN. Switch port access VLAN 2 is saying, and that single untagged VLAN is 2. And then we'll toss a no shutdown on the end of there. Some switches and routers default to all the ports being turned off. Some default to them all being turned on. No in front of a command removes that command, generally speaking, like our no VLAN 2. And so no shutdown is turning on a port. It's not going to hurt anything if it's already enabled. It's already not shut down. It won't do anything, but it's just a good habit. When you're done with a port, no shutdown. Okay, let's go configure it. And so I was typing on the other one because it's a little bigger here. This one I can't make much bigger. So I'm going to say switch port access VLAN. Oops, sorry, switchport mode access. Switchport access VLAN 2. I'm hitting tab to autocomplete so you get the whole words here. And no shutdown. All right. And what I'm going to do is I want to run a show command. I could type exit to get to back to config, exit to get out of config, and then my show command. I could also type, by the way, end, and that would give me the whole way out of config from however deep you are. But generally speaking, you can put do in front of a show command, and it'll let you run it from inside config mode or whatever interface. So I'm going to type in do show VLAN. And I can see here that I've got a VLAN 1 and 2. They exist. And up here, there we go. I can see that VLAN 2 is active on ET, Ethernet 0/0. Now, it's not telling me how it's configured exactly. And so the other thing you might want to do, and now I will type in end just to get the whole way out. I'm going to do show run. Show run, or I'm going to hit tab, running dash configuration is the whole current configuration of the switch, the way it's currently operating. And we can look at that, but I'm going to do show run interface ETH 0/0. And that's going to show me the whole configuration and how it's currently operating, except, well, just this little piece of it. Just interface Ethernet 0/0. And I can see that someone has configured it so that it's switchport access VLAN 2 and switchport mode access. And yay! It was no shutdown by default. That's why it's not showing up here. But it's not a bad habit. Cool. So now we've got that 0/0 configured. Now I'm going to go configure our Ethernet 0/1. I need to go put this into trunk mode. And the thing that'll fight back a little bit on a Cisco, though Cisco is by far the most popular networking company, at least certainly in North America and a lot of the world. But one of the things that'll kind of bite you on trunk mode, if you don't want to use DTP and VTP, which I recommend not doing, you got to turn them off kind of in the right order. Otherwise, when you go try and manually configure that trunk port, it'll just keep being like, I am sorry, Hal, I can't let you do that. Yeah. Or Dave, I can't let you do it. All right, let's do it here. So I'm going to go configure that trunk port. It's Ethernet 0/1. I need to get back to config mode first, though. To do that, I need to type, conft or config terminal. Now I'm going to head over to interface Ethernet 0/1, NTE 0/1. Right? Don't have to type much if you don't need to. And then I'm going to put it in trunk mode. But if I just say switchport mode trunk, it'll yell at me. I actually need to say switchport trunk encapsulation .1Q. Now I did SW tab, T tab, E tab, D tab, because I want to type the whole thing. And I didn't even have to hit tab. I just want to show you those words. So encapsulation trunk, or pardon me, switchport trunk encapsulation .1Q. Press enter. And now I'm going to say switchport mode trunk. And now I'm going to say switchport trunk allowed VLAN 2. Okay, so I'm going to copy this over to the notepad and we'll break it down in a second. And now I'm going to say switchport trunk native VLAN 1. And finally, switchport no negotiate. And no shut. What? All that stuff. Okay, let's go put it in here. So for access mode, we made sure the VLAN existed first, and then just said switchport mode access, switchport access VLAN, whatever number, and now that single Untagged VLAN was associated with it. Trunk mode, like we said, we've got more to take care of, specifying our tagged and untagged VLAN, and that mode as well, but also, like we said, disabling this VTP and DTP stuff. So let's go do that. And, oh, I just did 0 before. I'm going to fix this. Sorry, in here I just did Ethernet 0 before, so I have 0/0. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat and copy a bunch of this and paste it down here for our trunk config. So enable conft VLAN 2 or whatever VLANs you want to make. Interface ETH, in my case, 0/1. And switchport. And, oh, what was it? Oh, yeah, that's right, switchport trunk encapsulation dot, yeah, So used to not typing the whole thing. 1Q. Okay, remember we talked in the last video about this idea of there being an IEEE standard for negotiating. I said negotiating, I'm sorry, for encapsulating your traffic with a VLAN ID. Where's our picture? Yeah, here we go. In our drawing from last time around, right, we said that if the traffic is not tagged, if a packet frame is not tagged, then the Ethernet header, source and destination MAC, but doesn't say anything about a VLAN. And if it is tagged, that there is a this 802.1Q, this IEEE standard header that lives inside the Ethernet frame header that specifies a VLAN ID and also a priority. Well, that IEEE 802.1Q is an industry standard, but Cisco actually had their own proprietary standard first. Modern equipment doesn't even use it, but Cisco equipment for the longest time has wanted to negotiate to be like, okay, we do an IEEE standard, what are the Cisco one? And when we specify, stringing this down, when we specify switchport trunk encapsulation.1Q, we're saying don't try and negotiate between the IEEE standard 802.1Q and ISL, which was the Cisco proprietary one that doesn't get used anymore. Okay, so that's the first thing we do. We switchport trunk encapsulation.1Q. Okay, and then we would say switchport mode trunk. We're declaring it statically a trunk port. If we didn't do this, both of these, then it would try and negotiate with some other Cisco switch if it was in trunk mode and connected up. And then we're going to come in and say switchport trunk allowed VLAN and list a VLAN here. Like 2 was what we did. So switchport trunk, notice it's a switchport command, and it's a trunk thing. So it's like a subset of trunk. And then we're allowing a VLAN, and we're allowed VLAN, and 2. So this is our only tagged VLAN here. Now, technically we didn't have to do this. Technically any VLAN that exists would have been added if we didn't do this, but it depends on the exact switch, and I don't prefer it. If I can help it, I want to have in the configuration the VLANs that are allowed instead of just, yeah, whatever VLANs, those are the ones allowed on here. Because maybe I don't want all the VLANs on this trunk, right? Maybe it's going to some server that needs 10 VLANs and that's it, and I don't want to send a whole bunch of traffic to it that it doesn't need. Okay, so switchport trunk allowed VLAN 2 in this case would be VLAN 2. I will say if we did have an additional VLAN, like maybe if we created also a VLAN 3, then we could have said, oh yeah, you know, I made a VLAN 3 now and I want to do that. Then I could do switchport trunk allowed VLAN add 3. Okay, and that is a very important difference. Add 3 or add whatever VLAN says, cool, take whatever VLANs already were on this port as tagged and add this one to the list. If I did not have add on there, delete, it was just VLAN 3, then that would replace VLAN 2. That's a bad day. A lot of people have had that bad day. So yeah, be real careful with switchport trunk allowed command, switchport trunk allowed VLAN, and list a number, then that's the VLAN that's going to be on there. If there's already VLANs, then add is going to let you add to that existing list. Now, if you've got like 100 VLANs, you don't have to type it like 100 times. Instead, you'd be able to say just switchport trunk allowed VLAN 2, 3. And that would take care of them both. Or 2-3, right? I don't know, 2-100. If you got VLANs 2 through 100 that all exist on there, that's fine. Okay, but with the add, adds to whatever existing list of tagged VLANs are on that port. Without the add, replaces the existing list. All right, wanted to call that out there. Just going to clear this up. Boop. So it looks more like what we did. What was it? Okay, so we declared our encapsulation.1Q, our mode trunk. and we did switch port trunk allowed VLAN 2, we now would specify the untagged VLAN. And that would be another trunk command, switch port trunk native VLAN 1. So a native VLAN is the untagged VLAN on that trunk port. That's what this command does. It doesn't have to be VLAN 1. It could be VLAN 73, 3291. As long as the VLAN exists on the switch and that's what you want as your broadcast domain that's not tagged going to whoever's the other end of that cable, that's fine. But I'm just going to do native VLAN 1 here. Or trunk native VLAN 1. And then our switch port, no negotiate. There we go. No space. And that turns off the DTP, the dynamic trunking protocol. Awesome. And then just in case, let's do a no shutdown. Yeah. And that's how we got these set up. Now, if I come back in here, I'm still on that same switch. I'm going to do an end, just so I don't have to put do in front of my show commands. Show VLAN. And I can see that my VLAN 2 is a little tricky. Is active for Ethernet 0/0. Yeah, it's not showing up as my trunk there. But Cisco, you kind of got to do something special. I'm going to do show interface trunk. And it says that my ETH 0/1 mode on encapsulation.1q status trunking native VLAN 1. VLAN 2 is allowed on this trunk. Active in the management domain. Spanning tree, which I haven't talked about yet, is forwarding. Yeah, the show VLAN, depending on the exact switch you're on for Cisco, may not show your tagged VLANs. And so this command, show interface trunk, will get you real far though. Let's head over to our other switch and we'll just set it up the same way real quick. Enable conf t VLAN 2. And let's go do our interface Ethernet 0/1 with our trunk, and then we'll do our untagged. Let's see, interface ETH 0/1, and our switch port trunk encapsulation .1q, switch port mode trunk, switch port trunk allowed VLAN. Check out, I'm not even typing the whole thing. Switch port trunk allowed VLAN. There's a 2. Sorry, mind gone. And then switch port trunk native VLAN 1. And switch port, no negotiate. I hit tab on that one. Now, these are the kind of things where you just figure out how little you have to type, but the whole thing is there. What I'm going to do is, real quick, no shutdown. I'm going to do end to get the whole way out of here, and we'll look at the configuration, and we'll see that this is all there. Though VLAN 1 is the native VLAN by default, so that won't show up. Show run interface ETH 0/1. Hey, check it out. Switch port trunk encapsulation.1q, switch port trunk allowed VLAN 2, mode trunk, switch port no negotiate. The no shut was there by default, and the switch port trunk native VLAN 1 was there by default. That's why they're not showing up here. But it's a good habit to type what you want to be there anyway. Okay, let's go configure our Ethernet 0/0. And this one's going to be that access port. Oops. I'll do tab, switch port mode, access. Switch port, access, VLAN 2. And no shutdown. Oops. And I have typed the wrong vowel on no shut many times. Watch out. All right. First thing I like to double check our config. So show run. Oh, come on thing. Oh, I know why. So here's what just happened. I typed show wrong. And my habit's usually just, it's faster to just press enter, let it be wrong, and I'll retype it than it is backspace and retype it. But I have not disabled the default Cisco feature where if you type some word in that it doesn't recognize, it assumes that it should do a DNS lookup on there. I'm going to hold off on that right now. But yeah, that could have saved me a good bit of time. All right, show run interface ETH 0/0. switchport access VLAN 2, switchport mode access. Why is it backwards? I don't know. It's just the way I wanted it to be. Check our VLAN. VLAN 2 exists, Ethernet 0/0, or doesn't it say anything about my tag, but okay. Show interface trunk. There we go. 0/1 is got VLAN 2. Okay. So let's see here, and VLAN 2 is listed here for 0/0, and that's my my access port there. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ping from my desktop 0 to my desktop 1. I already gave him IPs, and then we're just going to go look at the MAC address table and see. All right, so desktop 0, and let's see what IP. Oh, that's right. Okay, so this one's 10.0.0.10, so the other one should be 20. Ping -C4, it makes me happy. 10.0.0.10. Okay, this is a Linux interface. -C is the count, otherwise it'll just go forever. So four pings. Hey, there's our 4 pings. Sent from here and on through, and receive 4 back. So what I'm going to do is let's go check out the command line for our switch number 1 here. And I said we look at our show MAC address table. That MAC address table, going back to our pictures for a second, right? Remember, every switch, what makes it a switch is that it has that MAC address table, that it's writing down the source MAC and the port that it came in on for any traffic. And also the VLAN, either based on the untagged VLAN setup or the VLAN tag, depending on how it's configured. So we should be seeing on ETH00, we should be seeing the MAC address of desktop 0. And we should be seeing the MAC address of desktop 0 or desktop 1 over on ETH01. If we look at my show MAC address table, I can see that I've got all these MACs learned on VLAN 2. Check it out, not the columns in the exact order I showed you, but still, VLAN 2, there's our MAC addresses, and there's our ports. This type dynamic, it's basically almost always going to be dynamic, and that means it's learned. Static would be if you manually put one in, or in some switch operating systems, you might see, depending on what you're doing in the operating system and the model switch, you might see the MAC address of like your own VLAN or port or something like that. But yeah, almost always just dynamic. That's the user MACs that have been learned. Okay, and ETH00 is where our desktop 0 is. Hey, and we see that there's some MAC address that's this blah, 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 ends with 0053. All right, go to desktop 00, and I already pulled up an ifconfig on there. And I should be able to see the hardware address, blah, 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 0053, or hey, BA0053 is the end of it. BA0053, yeah. And if I go to desktop 1, let's see its MAC. I already pulled up an ifconfig on there. Hardware address is this, here we go, ends with 7864. Back over here. And I should be seeing the 7864 on my 01. Hey, learning 2 MACs there. One's probably the other switch. Hey, 7864. Yep, here's the MAC address of desktop 1. Perfect. We'll be seeing those MAC addresses in the separate MAC address table over there on the other switch as well. Show MAC address table. And hey, there's that 7864 on ETH00. Yup. And the other one should be on 01. Yep. BA0053 on 01. VLAN 2. Dude, it works. It's all like we talked about. Okay. There's lots of operating systems, but Cisco is very popular, and so this will get you pretty far. Some operating systems, like we said, will have different commands to accomplish this goal, but as long as you're matching your tagged and untagged VLANs on there, and the message gets sent across correctly, you're going to be good. It doesn't matter if one of the two of these was Juniper or Dell or HP, whoever, right? NVIDIA. As long as you match your tagged and untagged VLANs, you're going to be okay. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. This continues to be a blast. Hey, like, subscribe, and if there's something that you want to make sure we get to cover, let me know, and I'll make sure it's in the queue, or maybe even bump it up in the queue if it's already there. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye. Okay, cables are connected. tags appear to be fixed. Seems right. Okay, you. Kiss.